Relationship practice for couples. Okay. This is a mindful relationship practice for couples. And we're going to be talking about what is a reflection day and why it is so helpful that it can even save your relationship. If your relationship is on the brink of destruction or disaster, you need to have a reflection day. If you paid me thousands of dollars, I might even come in and help you facilitate it. I might even do that. We're going to also talk about how reflection days work and what they look like. We're going to get into the details of what does a reflection day look like in order to manage a relationship. Okay. Then we're going to do a little Q&A. So look, if you're sticking with me on this live for the next 30 to 40 minutes, I'm going to be doing a Q&A where you can ask me any questions about reflection days, personality, relationships. You're getting some valuable insight. Just be ready to drop some questions. So before we dive into the nature of a reflection day, let us remember what exactly is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is an ability that an individual can learn and develop through the use of improving their self-awareness and social awareness, better managing and regulating themselves emotionally, physically, and being able to navigate complex relationships with grace, empathy, and solving conflicts. Okay. Emotional intelligence is a very, very powerful ability in being able to live a fulfilling life. Emotional intelligence is critical to you being able to live a fulfilling life. Okay. And many folks don't know this, but 64% of people have low to no emotional intelligence. Now, what does this mean? It doesn't mean you can't learn it. It just means that, right? It means because it's an ability. It's not, a trait. People who say emotional intelligence is a trait don't know what emotions are. And they're not following the neuroscience that's being backed by one of the leading neuroscience researchers in emotions and affect, that being Dr. Lisa Barrett. If you have not listened to Dr. Lisa Barrett, she is a profound neuroscientist that is very practical and in some cases philosophical in how she helps us understand emotions. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be jumping into this idea of reflection days. Now, as I just mentioned, your personality, or excuse me, emotional intelligence has these kind of four domains where the ability is mostly seen. And the key domain where you'll see a reflection day come to life is in relationship management. Relationship management, okay? When we think about managing relationships, what exactly does that mean? Right? What exactly does it mean to manage a relationship? Well, reflection days have something to do with that. Okay? Reflection days have something to do with managing your relationship. So, part of what we examine and look at is when we are in relationships, again, family, friends, work, there's an interplay of how we respond or react to them based on our personality preferences, based on our mood and affect in the day or in the week or in the month, and whatever sort of situational context that we may be in. If we're at work, maybe we're talking goals and not hitting goals. If we're in family, maybe we're talking about, connection and bonding or lack of connection and bonding. And if we're talking intimate relationship or friendships, then we're talking about, again, connection and bonding, but maybe not as frequent. So we're going to be sharing this for folks that attend, and folks on the live. You will be getting this EI cheat sheet. I'm going to put it in my link in bio, and I'm also going to drop this in the EQ crew. It should already be in there, actually. But let's press forward here. So during a reflection day, they typically spawn out of negative or uncomfortable emotions. Okay. And I have oftentimes noted that the catalyst for wanting or needing a reflection day is when you are experiencing discomfort and unpleasantness over and over again, right? I believe that if you have been feeling unpleasant in one or some of your relationships, that is a sign that you need a reflection day with those individuals. Okay. And unpleasant can look, there's many words to describe the feeling of, unpleasant, right? You can be feeling insecure in your relationship. You could be feeling envious in your relationship. You could be feeling resentful, right? All these different emotions that we don't want to feel, right? None of us go out of our way to feel insecure. Nobody's waking up in the morning and be like, you know what? I'm looking to resent this person, right? I'm waking up. I want to be depressed. Like nobody's doing that, right? So these are not emotions that we want to feel, right? But they happen. And they happen because there's just, dynamics at play that lead us down these paths where we start to, feel and make meaning out of our experiences that are unpleasant. And we therefore start to take action from that, either reaction, we start reacting to it, or we respond effectively. And by the way, a reflection day is an idea of responding, right? A reflection day is a high EQ practice. And during reflection day, you can use love languages, I statements. These are very important and powerful tools for helping you navigate tense conversations, especially with an intimate partner. But you also can do this again with different relationships. So let's break it down really quick. A reflection day is a structured day that either you or someone proposes to come together for several hours. Okay, this is not a 10-minute meeting. This is not a 10-minute conversation. This is a dedicated time where you and this individual are committing 1 to 2 to 3 hours to reflect on how you all interact with one another. Okay, a reflection day is a dedicated amount of time during a day where there's no tech, right? No comms, no phone, no tech, where you're coming together to have a meaningful discussion around how you all interact with one another. All right. And you're going to be reflecting on various aspects of your relationship with that individual. This is a dedicated time, like I said, that allows a couple or an employee and a manager to step back from the day-to-day life, the day-to-day task, the busyness of things, and to reflect together on what is actually happening and what dynamics are at play in order to foster greater connection and a sense of belonging and psychological safety in a relationship. In addition to this, reflection days offer couples an opportunity, in particular, this is more of an intimate piece. It offers couples an opportunity to set goals and aspirations for their relationship, right? And discussing long-term adjustments that are needed to ensure that that relationship can thrive in the long run. So these are wonderful this is a wonderful practice for laying out what do you want the relationship to look like after we, kind of navigate and discuss some of the things that have been causing us, to feel unpleasant. So at the heart of reflection days, you're bringing tools to the table to initiate the reflection day. So what does it look like, right? So I'm going to share this in the form of a story. I'm going to tell a story. So back in 2018, my wife and I, we were going to Hawaii. And, when we went to Hawaii, anytime we go to somewhere new, it always tends to kind of make us feel unpleasant initially because we are adapting to the environment, right? And my wife and I, we prefer to have things kind of structured. We prefer to have certainty. We prefer to have, a plan. But when we are in the midst of a new space or a new environment, it kind of gets us to wiggle a little bit, right? Like we get a little bit uncomfortable. And then that discomfort may seep into our communication to one another. And then that starts to maybe cause a rift, cause an argument. And if this happens enough times, right, now we're starting to form a mood, right, a vibe towards that individual where these discomfort or these unpleasant feelings and emotions are starting to be persistent. So that was the case in my relationship. And this is why I say reflection days saved my relationship. Because, see, my wife and I have different personalities. I know there's a lot of people out there in relationships where they have the same personality or similar personalities. I tend to prefer to be in a relationship with somebody that's different than me, not the same. And with that comes challenges, right? And with those challenges can come growth if you're ready to grow. And so, my wife and I, after being in Hawaii, right, we came back and I had thrown out this idea to her. I was like, hey, we need to have a reflection day. And she was like, what? What is that? Never even heard of that. And to be honest, right, I invented it. It's a concept that I created, right? I made it, right? So I tell her about what this entails. I say, well, a reflection day is where, we're gonna pull up our personality assessments. We're gonna pull up, our Myers-Briggs type indicator, and we're gonna have a conversation around how you've been feeling, how you're doing, what's bothering you, and we're going to connect whatever is top of mind for you to different parts of your personality. That way we can understand each other through some common language, and we can actually empathize. We can like legitimately empathize because we're communicating through the same framework, right? I think many folks think they're empathizing, but sometimes they're not. Empathy requires having similar or shared meaning, right? And oftentimes, I think we assume what other people, or how other people make meaning of things, and we don't really actually know. But when you have a shared framework in place, the assumptions there's no need for assumptions because all the framework is established as a baseline of meaning, right? You have a shared pool of meaning with the framework. So because my wife was already aware of this personality tool, she was like, okay, you know what? That's interesting. Never thought to do that before. So I say, yeah, let's do it. So we actually go in our living room. We pull up our assessments on the television. We link up the TV to my laptop. And then we begin. And I start with sharing a little bit about my life and like what I've been navigating and the stresses of my job, for example, and being and working with people that don't think like me and the stress and the challenges that comes with. And I pointed to, I said, there's a part of my personality right here that gets irritated. And that part of me is, I believe that I'm not around enough conceptual people, right? And I often feel like I have to adapt to people that aren't examining the world through the lens of concepts. They're just taking it at face value. And that has been bothering me. And it makes me feel like I'm losing a sense of self because every day I go to work, I'm interacting with people who don't think like me. And it's starting to change me a little bit. It's starting to change me a little bit. So I had expressed this. And what was so beautiful and what happens on Reflection Day is that this wasn't prompting Jenna to then take her moment to share how she feels. She was invited to inquire about how I was doing using language about my personality that I understood. This is powerful stuff, y'all. This is like, we're not even therapists here, right? I'm not a therapist. My wife's not a therapist, but we're engaged in a therapeutic practice that doesn't require a lot, right? It required a framework, a television to put it up on the screen, and just some time. That's it. That's all it took was some time, right? So this was super powerful, and I encourage folks the real power behind a reflection day is really having the framework. And I recommend the Myers-Briggs type indicator, and particularly step 2, not just the basic Myers-Briggs, because there's not enough depth there. But I recommend this because you can get really granular about how someone prefers to be. And you can ask questions about different parts of their personality, which is really powerful. So my wife, let's go back to the story. My wife then said, well, Orrin, what is it about being conceptual that matters to you? And I was like, damn, what? My wife is hitting me with a meaningful, deep question. What is it? What is significant about the conceptual part of my personality? I then went on to share. I was like, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I said that growing up, oftentimes my environment, my direct, immediate environment, was not something that I cared for because it brought me discomfort. So I started to grow more interested in things like the arts and drawing and kind of looking outside of self into more like fantasy, non-direct experiential things, right? Which led me to appreciate concepts more and start to look at the world through the lens of ideas and concepts. And she paused and said, wow, I didn't even know that about you. By the way, y'all, we've only been in a relationship at this point for a year. Me and my wife at the time have only been in a relationship for a year, and she's asking me questions about my personality and why certain facets of my personality are significant to me. Powerful stuff, okay? Then her turn came, and she talked about her social anxiety. My wife is very relatable, okay? She's very relatable, I think, to a lot of folks in US culture. And so my wife started talking a little bit about social anxiety because when we were going trips, she, sometimes, with social anxiety, right, you kind of feel a little awkward, right? Just existing can feel a little awkward when you're in a space full of people you don't know, right? So she had a moment to share, and she started talking about how, when I ask her to maybe do something in a social environment that she's not familiar with, or I make a request and she's like, no, and kind of like wiggles out of it, she was like, that putting her or suggesting that she take steps to engage in social life with strangers drains her of a lot of energy. And then she went on to point out, she brought up her personality assessment and then showed, I don't like to initiate, I'm not an extrovert. I don't like to initiate or be congenial right out the gate, right? I need to receive first. And I'm over here listening. I'm like, okay, this is like a new way for me thinking about introversion, right? We're getting granular. This is what emotional intelligence is about, getting granular with how people are. And so she went on to share how it's best if we leverage my personality aspects, like being an initiator. When we are on trips, it's best that I lead in that way and that she comes in, pre-trip and kind of establishes different parts of the plan. That way, when she gets through the trip, she don't got to do any initiating with new people there, which is really powerful, right? So now we are reflecting on, we're looking at an experience that happened, a conflict where she got drained, and maybe my communication wasn't top tier. And we're looking back on that and saying, part of she's taking ownership of how she feels, not blaming anybody, but taking ownership of how she feels by saying, I get drained in these type of situations because I prefer to receive energy, right? I prefer to receive the conversation. I prefer to receive, right? I'm more low key, especially when we're in new environments. And me hearing this, I'm processing this, and I'm like, this is significant to her. This is a significant part about her personality. So what am I going to do? And an action came out of this during reflection day. When we are on trips, I am not going to suggest or invite or demand even that she step out of her comfort zone in this way. Why? Because I know what it's going to do. It's going to drain her a lot. And I don't want to do that, right? Especially on vacation somewhere, right? So these learnings came out of a reflection day where we were, again, looking at both of our personality assessments and having meaningful conversation through it. So I have on the screen here an example, but I've been telling this story because it's real life. This is real life stuff, right? This is not made up. My partner and my wife and I, we've been so fortunate to have frameworks in place so early on in our relationship that we are like ultra resilient, right? Like the foundation is strong, the bones are strong of the house, okay? And part of that is because we invested time and energy into practices, into frameworks to help our relationship thrive and not just survive. Okay. And so this stuff is super important. And so when we think about you doing a reflection day, I want to talk about you doing this. Okay. Now we're going to turn the attention to the audience. You need to remember that there is this, I call it the triangle of progress. Okay. To make progress in your relationship, to make progress in your life, this triangle goes on one corner, there's doing. You got to take action, right? You have to take action. From action, we get to the next part of the triangle, top of the triangle. You get reflection. After you reflect, you get application. You apply your reflections, the insights you gained from the reflection, you apply those to your next set of actions. This is how you make progress and you become wise, okay? So many of us in our culture and in our relationships, we don't reflect. We just do, we read some stuff, and then we just try it over again. And next thing you know, we're caught in a pattern or a cycle that does not generate new insights or new information. So we got to be really intentional about how we reflect. And that's why we recommend using tools like, personality assessments. I recommend the Myers-Briggs. So what you need to do to set up a reflection day, block off time in advance. Go to that person today. Say, hey, I want to talk. Let's just have a talk. I want to talk. Now, maybe he use some different language because if you're in a relationship, you're like, hey, I want to talk. Maybe they think it's something gonna be conflict related. So go to them and say, hey, I want to have a reflection day. All right. And block off some time. Maybe it can be in the morning, right? From 10 to 12. This is going to be an uninterrupted time. And make sure you're both in a good headspace. Make sure neither of you are tired or hungry, right? Make sure you have enough time to, and make sure you feel ready to engage in meaningful conversation. The next important reminder is when you're engaged in the reflection day, you want to use I statements. This is a very powerful aspect of nonviolent communication. During reflection day, you should not, or you should minimize as best you can, such statements like you are the reason for, you did, I feel this way because of you, right? Like you don't want to be doing that too much because what that starts to do is it starts to break down the communication and it starts to turn more into an argument and conflict because the other party, the other person starts to feel like they're being attacked. So you want to stick to I felt, stressed out when I had to make that call when we were overseas and I felt uncomfortable. And what I need is one, not to be in a position to do that, but two, if I am going to do it, I need to have enough advance notice. That way I can prepare myself emotionally, socially to be able to do that. Notice how we're going from what sounds like an attack to now sounds like I'm taking responsibility, I'm taking ownership of how I feel and what I've experienced, and I'm sharing that meaning with you. Now, keep in mind as well, as a important reminder in Reflection Day, you also want to focus on some things that are going great in a relationship, right? You don't have to just reflect on what's been tough, what's been challenging. You can take a moment to reflect on parts of your relationship that are flourishing, right? What's going well. And in fact, If you want, you can start with that. You can start with good, and you can end with what you need to work on. That way, you can kind of close out with some clear takeaways for you and your partner or friend or coworker to work towards by the end of the reflection day time. So, I want you all to do this, right? I want you all to get this workout in. If you haven't already, you and your partner or friend try and get the official Myers-Briggs assessment. You can work with me to do that if you want. You also can take my free Shining and Shadow quiz, which is on inmotion.com. It is under self-discovery tools. You can get some quick insights about yourself and your partner. Let me know if you're looking to do a reflection day and you've taken those quizzes. I'd be more than happy to provide you a custom breakdown of how you should go about using that in your reflection day. Number 2, for the workout, put the reflection day on the calendar. Let's make it real, right? Block off some time. Right now, we're going into a new month tomorrow. Have a reflection day in March, okay? My wife and I we're having a reflection day soon. It's going to be on finances, right? We're on the cusp of making some major life decisions, and so we need to reflect on that before we start making all these dang on decisions, okay? So I'm putting a reflection day on my calendar, put one on yours, and share how it goes. Now, at this time, we're going to open it up for Q&A, and I'm going to back out of the presentation a little bit. We got a few folks here. What's up, Orrin? What's up, Reggie? And we're going to get this Q&A kind of kicked off here. So let me see. I'm also on live, so I'm going to see if anyone has any questions on the live about reflection days. It's a great practice. Shoot, what kind of questions y'all got? What do we got? Reggie, Orton, you got any questions? Folks on the live, do you have any questions about reflection days?
Hey, Orrin.
Hey.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. Really loving the idea around reflection days and especially how you're leveraging different strengths from each person in the couple. My question is around the timeline, like the timing of reflection days and like how often have you found it to be most effective?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, how often should we be doing a reflection day? And does that impact its effectiveness? Is that right, Orton? I want to make sure.
Yeah, exactly. And also like for the duration of it, because I know you gave a wide range to like 1 to 3 hours, and
yeah,
I'm curious about like the case where you're dealing with a conflict or something where you know it could really get drawn out and maybe people get burned out, right? So
yeah,
yeah, wanting to know how to navigate that.
yeah. So let's start with that first piece. When it comes to a reflection day, I recommend that you do it ideally 1 to 2 times a year. And now this is for relationships where like you're not feeling unpleasant a lot. Okay. So like, for example, within my relationship, right, I may feel unpleasant 1 or 2 times a month. Right. And now if you scale that out to 6 months, right, I've had 12 times where I felt unpleasant. And has that stuck with me? Am I making meaning out of that? That's, kind of taking away from my relationship. Am I showing up differently because of these 12 unpleasant times? If so, and you got to have self-awareness in order to be tracking this stuff, right? And also your partner or friend is going to likely give you feedback throughout these times. That would be an indication of like, all right, it's time to have a reflection day. So you can have them twice a year or, once every 6 months. That's the kind of cadence that I follow. And usually the timing around it is we're packing in about 2 hours worth of conversation. So this is not just a quick meeting, have some coffee, talk for 15 minutes. This is a dedicated time of 2 hours. And here's the interesting thing. When you're putting that calendar invite up there, usually, when you get in a good conversation and you're just you don't even notice the time. You're just in there, right? Many folks have experienced this. When you're locked into a good, meaningful, developing kind of conversation, you kind of can lose track of time, right? So why we recommend a time block, a minimum of 2 hours, is because there's going to be moments where you're sharing about your perception of things, your emotions, your personality, and you might be speaking on that for several minutes. And then what's cool is that other person, because this is a reflection day, this is not an argument day, right? That other person is going to be asking you questions about yourself.
Mhm.
And then, you're going to be doing that back for them, right? So this can go back and forth on 4 or 5 different facets of your personality, whatever is relevant to the conflict or the issue. So to recap, 1 or 2 times a year, depending on how frequently you experience unpleasantness or uncomfortable emotions in a relationship, and time frames about 2 hours. And in terms of the effectiveness, right? So you can make a case that if you're experiencing discomfort so much in the relationship, and you feel like I need a reflection day like every day. I mean, that's the sign you need to go to therapy, right? Like, right? I mean, a therapist is going to be with you what, every week, every other day, every other week, whatever the cadence
Mhm.
is. So, you know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So like that's a sign like, all right, like we need like counseling, right? We need like, some clinical help here because things are getting destroyed. The reflection days, as I'm pitching it, is preventative. This is preventative of needing to go to a counselor or a therapist, in part because if you build this practice in, you're already doing some of these things that may happen in counseling, but you're doing it with tools in place already, and you're having dialogue, and you're used to listening, actively listening when somebody's sharing their emotion. I mean, how many relationships struggle with actively listening to their partner, right? That they got to bring a third party in. So reflection days is trying to establish key practices already for you to start doing this. And the framework, the MBTI as an example, is a great tool to concentrate around because it's neutral. No part of your personality is wrong or bad. So that's kind of the thought there. I think we lost transmission with Orton, but we still have Reggie on the line. And we got any folks here? We got somebody, a follower of Christ, sharing some stuff in the chat. But yeah, so Reggie, no questions, no worries. Just got back from the gym, lifting those weights. We love to see it. Orton, was that helpful?
Hey, it looks like my internet dropped and I dropped right off the call right at the point where you said the part about 6 months. If you need more than that, that's a sign that that couple might need therapy, right?
Yeah.
And
hmm
so,
Yeah. So pretty much what I was saying was, if you are experiencing, discomfort frequently in a relationship, that may be a good prompt for getting, relationship counseling or therapy.
mhm,
Um, and what I was saying was that like a reflection day is preventative of counseling and therapy, right? So this is work you could be doing already to enhance or improve your relationship through some very simple tools, right? A personality tool where you got common language and dedicating time to listen to one another and to use your personality as a neutral language in describing how you're feeling, right? So, um, yeah, that's kind of the value of reflection days. But
right on.
yeah, man.
Does
Uh,
that is that any different from a check-in at all? Like I can imagine because people have like, all right, we're gonna talk on the phone every night, or
yeah.
we're gonna like get coffee every Sunday, or like whatever, things like that. Like it's sounding to me like this is separate. There's a possibility that people could have something else in between that's more like 15 minutes,
hmm
um, where that might involve like conflict management
hmm
or appreciation.
Yeah.
But it's sounding like this is really more about that like big goal setting, like really understanding each other and like how your personality is showing up over a long period of time.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you said that. So a check-in, is I think check-ins can be kind of informal, right? And oftentimes people might not be prepared to share in depth. Um, and while, that really does depend on the expectations you're setting for the check-in, and
Mhm.
that's kind of what I would say distinguishes or a reflection day is there's intention around we are going to talk. We're going to have a conversation back and forth for a minimum of 2 hours.
Mhm.
Like, and again, it's not all bad, right? You don't have to talk about just conflict or issues. Certainly, that is the motivation for what people wanting to do this. Um, but you can also talk about what's been working well, which is nice, right? If you can take some time to, I mean, we don't even often uh, spend time just acknowledging what's working, right?
No.
You know what I mean? Like, who's going to therapy to talk about what works well? Ain't nobody doing that, right? So a reflection day also is encompassing of, what's working well, right? So spending time, like, for example, if I'm pulling up my personality assessment and I'm saying to my wife, a part of my personality that I've really been seeing show up in our relationship is my preference for being systematic, right? So the fact that I'm setting up different things in our life, like, you know, uh, organizing, the chores in this way, and setting up our accounts, our financial accounts in this way, and like having this all tracked and monitored in a way that it's easy for us to understand. That's working well for us because you don't have to have any sort of financial worries that we're going to be unstable at any point,
Mhm.
right? And then partner then has an opportunity to follow up on that and say, well, is there anywhere in our relationship that could use more of your systematic strengths, right? That could use more of this system? Well, that's a great question, right? Maybe around dinners, like, maybe right now the person who cooks more maybe wants to even that out a little bit, right? So maybe we could build a system around that. We leverage parts of your personality in that manner. This is what I'm talking about, right? So it's really cool stuff that can happen when you got these tools in place and you're dedicating time to explore what's working well, what's not working well, and you're actually inquiring into how others are receiving it. So that's where I would say, like, it definitely differentiates from a check-in. Um, so does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks. That like all your answers so far have really helped me to really actually understand like how this framework works for
Yeah.
the couple and or friends or any person in your life that you really want to like have those goals with. And um, now I'm just kind of brainstorming and thinking about like how I can leverage it.
Yeah, yeah. And I plan to do this. I certainly, my wife and I have mostly done it. We've done it for our relationship, and that's a romantic relationship. I actually want to try it with a friend, right? For now, I haven't necessarily prompted any friends to engage in it because, since I moved, I'm not around them as much. So we don't have as many experiences. So, but I want to, despite that, I still want to try and have a reflection day, and have a moment where we can talk about how we operate. So that's something I'm going to look to initiate with my friend group this year because we're only getting older and friendships are hard to come by the older you get. So you should probably have reflection days to spend some quality time with friends and actually talk about how they are seeing themselves and how they are navigating life with their personality, right? So, um, yeah, man, this is really fascinating stuff. So, usually these workshops last about 45 to an hour, depending on the volume of questions. But I will be uploading this deck into the recording into the EQ crew, and I have a plan uh, to put all this stuff on YouTube and share it on social media and such. Um, but yeah, let's have some reflection days. Or anyone in mind who you think you would want to have a reflection day with?
Oh, I have like maybe two friends that I think it could be cool. Like these are people who are really into this stuff and
Yeah,
growth and connection, especially. I'm curious to like imagine what it might look like with family too.
Yeah,
That one, it's a different ball game, of course, but
sure.
that's something I think that it could be adapted to that,
It
and
could. Yep.
especially, you know, like you were talking about this way that we're having X number of interactions and stuff. I think your family is someone like it's really worth investing it because these are people that are gonna be in your life like indefinitely,
Yeah.
and so I could see like how it could be of value there, and if you're like
Yeah.
having like a aging parent, like you want
Mhm.
to support them, there's probably so much to explore there, and like how you can show up best for them and what they need from you, this kind of stuff. So um
Yeah.
very
Powerful.
powerful.
Powerful, man. And actually, we did get one question, and um, someone said that they want to do this with a friend. They were on the live. One of them mentioned that, what do you do if you don't have like the assessment, right? What do you do if you're not using like that assessment that you and Reggie got, being EQ crew members, right? That's a good question, right? Because the power that I felt in the reflection day is primarily because of that tool had all these words on it that describe how I operate. So an alternative could be either a simpler assessment where you just come with some, you just rely on that individual to be able to share with clarity and depth about how they are seeing things, right? That's kind of baseline. The second thing would be to, you can use the personality playbook in the shadow quiz and the shining quiz. All that stuff's free, so you don't got to pay a nickel to even just like literally send this quiz to your friend, see if they're a guider, enforcer, giver, or innovator, and then send them the playbook and be like, hey, read 2 pages about this personality or persona that you think you might kind of that might fit how you see the world and how you operate. Once you get that, then you can start to, you at least got some language to start navigating that, right? So I'm a big fan that you definitely want to have some framework in place to be able to use, because we all know that our social reality, our lives, our social lives are so contingent upon the words we use to communicate. And a reflection day will not be as powerful or as meaningful if one or both parties are struggling to share with depth and clarity how they're feeling, how they operate, and what actions they want to take from it, right? And I think for a lot of folks, that I've had friends that went to relationship counseling, relationship therapy. Part of the challenge there too was the language, right? They didn't have like a common framework or language to discuss what was happening. And this is why I'm a big fan of these tools. So with that, we're going to be back, y'all, for a March workshop. We're going to crowdsource a topic from our EQ crew, and we're going to likely deliver it at the end of March. Um, Reggie, while I have you here, if you can still hear us, anyone come to mind of who you would want to do a reflection day with?
For sure, my wife. And then honestly, Orton made a good suggestion with family. I really hadn't thought about family. But once he really put in perspective of just like, these are your folks, these are your people, these are
Mm,
the ones you're gonna be with that you're, essentially stuck with in a sense.
yeah,
Um, so, why not maximize those relationships? And to his other point about, them aging at the end of the day. So it's just like, hey, why not? Yeah, just overall, why not maximize those relationships to see how uh, it can be it can be mutually beneficial for both of y'all to,
yeah,
proceed and in essence, really grow together.
yeah, man. I'm thinking how powerful it would be to, if my mom was still here today, how awesome would it be to have a reflection day with my mom? To have her personality up there and mine, and I'll be like, see, I remember when I was younger and I couldn't go outside. because I didn't have any reasoning for not being able to go out, right? That would be an interesting conversation. But I think it would be awesome to do it with family. I think it would only enhance and improve family dynamics. And imagine being in a family dynamic where reflection days are a part of the culture. You know what that prevents? Trauma, prevents unnecessary arguments, pain, right? So important stuff, y'all. Thank you guys for both joining. I'm going to end the live here. Thanks for joining on the live. If you want the EI cheat sheet, hit my DMs or follow. Take it easy. And I'm actually glad you both are on here. I'll stop the